Oh, hello everyone. Welcome to the Econobox garage. Come on inside where it's a little bit warmer. Well, before I get going on the rest of this week's video, I thought I would test the generator that I put together in the previous video. Now there's two ways I've discovered. One on the Moss Motors channel, that requires a battery, and I don't have a charged one on hand right now. And the other one doesn't require a battery. So I'm going to use that method. Now the test I'm going to use just shows that it's actually creating voltage. It doesn't show how much, so it's a very, very basic one. Now both methods require a jumper across these two connections here. So I've just made a little connection for that. In addition to that little jumper, I need a test light and I need a drill with a socket on it to drive the generator. Now one thing to make sure as you're turning it the right direction, you'll see there's an arrow on the casing showing the direction, so it turns that way. So I'll just make sure I've got the drill set correctly. Okay, you can see my jumper cables there. Connected my test light to one of the poles. It doesn't matter which one. And then I've just jammed the point into the screw here, which will ground it. So theoretically, if I turn the generator over with the drill and it creates voltage, this should light up. And that will tell me that at least it is producing voltage, and that's all I'm after for this at this point in time. So let's give that a try. So again, basically all I've got is a socket of the appropriate size on my drill. And I'm going to make sure it's turning the direction of the arrow on the casing here that I pointed out earlier. So let's try this. So it is lighting up a little bit, which tells me it is getting voltage. And that's all I'm worried about for now. So I'll take all of this off and put this aside, waiting to get installed in the car. One of the items on the agenda for this week is to get the exhaust put in the car, at least the pipe itself. I'm not too sure if I'll get to the muffler. But I thought I'd show you the bits and pieces. Here's the original pipe that I had repaired. The person I got this from had cut it in half to make it, quote, easier to store. So that's been repaired. As I showed you in an earlier video. So this is the end that goes at the exhaust manifold, and that uses this clamp here. Now this is the one that came off the car originally, and you can see it's starting to come apart. The bolts are actually seized up, at least this one is. So I purchased a new bracket for that, or a new clamp for that. So that one will go. In an earlier video I showed installing the steady bracket for the exhaust, which mounted to the gearbox, and I'll put a link above to that video. But this is the other part of that bracket, so that'll mount on the steady bracket, and then this will clamp around the pipe itself, and that holds it nice and steady, as the name implies. Now this little bracket here mounts on a vertical surface just beside the spring box, and the original part this was all mangled up and has actually fallen apart. So I think I already threw that part out. This is the original of this bracket, so you see it's been bent up quite a bit and what have you. So I just purchased a whole new setup for that with all the appropriate bolts. So that part will go away. The muffler itself clamps to the pipe. This is the clamp that was on this system. I cleaned that up and I'll reuse it. And so this is a little mounting hardware that attaches the muffler to the tab that's on the bottom of the car. Now I'm not 100% sure if those line up yet, but I'll find out once I get to that, and if I have to fabricate something I will for that. And while I'm underneath the car, I'm going to install the ground strap that I ordered recently. Well, I have the carburetors temporarily mounted on the manifold here, so I'm just going to pull those off. These are later HS2 carburetors, and they're equipped with the positive crankcase ventilation right into the carbs themselves. I'm going to eliminate this part as it's a bit older, and I'll just run it right from this canister into a Y fitting and into these two barbs here. The other ones here are for fuel, and I'm just going to have to check to make sure I get everything hooked up correctly on those as well. By pulling all of this off right from the heat shield out, that will give me better access to the exhaust manifold, so I'll be able to put the clamp that goes between it and the exhaust pipe on. Well, now you can see I got a lot easier access to the exhaust manifold here where the exhaust pipe comes up. It also gives me space to work on the fuel line that's coming up. This comes from the back of the car, so I'm probably going to cut it off down here somewhere and just run rubber hose up to the carbs. First thing I'm going to do is clean up the inside of this surface here, clean up any rust and what have you, and then I'll do the same on the mating surface of the exhaust manifold itself. So I'm doing that to make sure I get the best possible seal between the pipe and the manifold. Now when I ran the fuel line, I gave myself lots of extra up at the front here. But now that I'm ready to put the exhaust in, this is going to be in the way. So for now, I'll just cut this down here, get this coil out of the way of the exhaust, and then I can get moving on the next step. I cut that extra coil of fuel line out of the way. Now I can get underneath and start putting in the exhaust. Now the exhaust pipe itself comes up through this opening here and then coils back up to the manifold here. Now before I get under the car, I've just put the steady bracket clamp in place loosely on the pipe, and the same for the one at the back, so that's just on loose. And then before I go and put that on, and I'll go and put this bracket underneath the car as well. I have the bolts loosely in place for the steady bracket at the front, and the same for the one at the back. Now I will probably get some shorter bolts for this one. These are the only ones that I had, and they're a little bit long, but I don't think that'll be an issue, and if it is, I'll pick up some shorter ones. Well, here we are into the back of the car. Here's the damper on the left-hand side of the car, and there's the bottom of the exhaust bracket right there. So that's for that one. And then you'll see there is the steady bracket. So it gets firmly mounted to the steady bracket up front, and there's a little bit of give in this one at the back here. Well, I've discovered that I have this bracket on incorrectly and that my jack stand is in the way. I'm going to undo this. So I'll get the car jacked up, move the jack stand, and then I can get the pipe in the proper spot. There we have the exhaust pipe bracket in the correct orientation, and I just moved the jack stand over so it's under the spring instead of under the axle, and that gives me lots of room to get the pipe through where it belongs. Now, one thing I just noticed too that I need to do is over on here is I need to get some clamps on the fuel line. So I'll do that, and then I'll get up to the other end of the car and then get that ground strap installed. Okay, so there's the clamps on the fuel line. So next up, ground strap. So here you can see the ground strap in place, bolted to the car here, and through one of the bolts that attaches this clutch slave cylinder. And while I'm under here, here's that steady bracket again for the exhaust. And there's the clamp that goes around the pipe and mounts to the front face of this bracket. So that way the exhaust pipe is kept fixed relative to the engine, which helps that old style clamp on the pipe to the manifold work a lot better. So that's that end. So that's the exhaust pipe end. Muffler will be a little bit later. That's the ground strap in. And I think that's enough for under the cart for today. Well, that's a wrap for this week's video. I hope you've enjoyed it. Come back next time when I'll be working on refurbishing the heater box. If you have enjoyed this week's video, please be sure to share it with a friend. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and don't forget that little bell icon. Click on that and you'll get notified when the next video comes out. If you'd like to contact me directly, you can do so at the email address I'll put at the bottom of the screen, and that'll be in the video description as well. My name is Ian. This is the Econobox Garage. We'll see you next time.